Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Female Health with Amy and Lisa. I'm here with my lovely co-host, Amy Connor. I'm Lisa. And we thought today would be a good idea to talk about outgrowing relationships. We have already talked about boundaries and how to set boundaries for a relaxed Christmas or any other holiday that you encounter. And when you start setting boundaries, it might very well be that some people are not quite happy with the boundary you put in place. And sometimes that simply needs some reorganization, some negotiation. And sometimes it can be an indicator that this relationship needs to be looked at and maybe revised or lessened. And it's a serious topic. We don't want to make anyone angry. Don't want to push people away. And also we want for you to prioritize yourself and your own well-being. So yeah, without further ado, let's dive straight in. Amy, what are your thoughts on outgrowing relationships?
Yeah, it's the hard part of stepping into your worthiness and when you set off to self-improve and all of the things around self-care and health and well-being. This is one of the trickiest things to navigate because it's wrapped in so much emotion, and for a lot of the time it can be relationships that you've had from childhood, from a really young age, that are part of your identity, that can be where you are looking at changing that relationship. And sometimes, as you said, it can be that you just need to reassess together with the other person what you're willing to bring to the relationship and what you expect in return. And other times it can lead to that really untricky situation where you've got to, I kind of think of the phrase bless and release, because like Lisa said, we're coming from a place of love with this, and it's not that the people who you outgrow aren't no longer in your heart and that you don't love them and wish the best for them. It's just that you're all on your own individual journey, and it's the most loving thing to do for both parties involved, because for want of a better term, if they're holding you back, then the same will be for them, that you will be holding them back from reaching their potential and where they need to go on their journey. And this is, like, there's so many. I always have a bit of a joke that I've only got like 4 friends because I keep outgrowing relationships, and there's this really beautiful mentality that people aren't meant to be in your life forever. Some people are meant to come in and give their gift and then depart. And it's the same for you. You're not meant to be in everybody's journey at the same time for a prolonged period of time. And I've had it myself where I've had friends from childhood where being friends with that person is part of my identity. And like, I always get a bit icky about the term like best friend, and because I'm just like, oh, how does that even fit? How can you have a best friend? Because we all have friends that have different personalities and different needs and different places in our lives. And there's one relationship I'm thinking of in particular where it's been really hard for me to accept that relationship, that friendship isn't right for me. And it'd start off by me thinking, oh no, I've got to go and see so and so, and just not look, like, it would creep in that, oh, like, it's really inconvenient that I have to go and see X, or that X has messaged, or and when I caught myself doing that, I was like, why? Where is this coming from? And then it would go from, eventually we'd distance ourselves and not see each other as often or not speak as often. And then when I do go and spend time with that person, it would be for others around me, particularly my husband, to pick up on the fact that I come home in a different mood.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you're more negative when you've spent time with that person, you come back and life's hard and everything's negative. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm not saying that we should have friends that only bring us joy all the time, because obviously when your friends are going through tough times, you're going to be there for them no matter what. But there should be some sense of joy in that relationship. And
I was just reminded of like something uplifting in that relationship, because even in the dark times you can uplift one another.
yes.
Not this force like we have to be positive about this. No, but this inner sense of, okay, but there is someone who holds me and who loves me and that I can reach out to. And when we meet, I always feel better than when I started. Like when we leave, we feel better than when we met.
Absolutely. And something just popped into my head then, that we shouldn't be doing it out of duty, and that when friends are going through hard times, we should know that we are there because we know things are going to get better. And that can be better in your relationship as a whole, as in, like, I can guide this person and love and hold this person through this period of their life, and it's all going to be okay, rather than thinking, oh, I've got to go and help this person, and knowing in your heart that, and that's okay, because sometimes it can come across as a bit selfish. Because if you've got a friend who is draining your resources and not giving what they're receiving, it's hard work, and eventually it burns out. So, if you've got somebody who is only friends with you because you say yes all the time, and then when you say no, it's like, ooh, I'm going to move on to this person, or, and I'm thinking back to my youth when, there'd be certain people that would only want to know me if I was going out that night and going to be at the party and having a good time. Whereas if I then turn around and said, oh, actually, I don't fancy that, I'd rather do this, and that wasn't on their agenda, and I wasn't serving the purpose that they needed me for, there's relationships like that where you're like, oh, and if it's okay to have friends that you can just go out and have a good time with, that's absolutely fine. But it's about the emotional investment that you put into those relationships. And when I look back, I was always the yes girl. I always wanted to be needed and wanted. And it's taken me like 38 years to come to this realization that a lot of my friendships and relationships were built on the fact that I'm a really nice person and I would do anything for anyone. And although that's a really nice quality to have, it's okay to say no to people. And we give these like labels of people and descriptions of people that we think are really good, like what I just said, she'd do anything for anyone.
It's nice.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, it's mostly a she that needs to be nice, not a he or a
they. Absolutely. And that, like, sometimes having a complete lack of boundaries is a really good thing, because everybody wants to be around you because you don't say no, and you'll help them doing whatever it is that they need help with, even if it's completely draining of your resources. And that's where you get to the point where you're like able to acknowledge that and be like, oh, hang on, what would happen if I said no? What would happen if I can't help look after their children, or if I can't do X or Y, or if what happens if I need them to help me with something?
Yeah, I think I've always had, like, at least starting in my early 20s, I have reflected on these things. And so for a very long time, I can say that I have got only people in my circle, like in the closer circle, that I dearly love, that I know I can reach out to. We sometimes only have contact like once or twice a year, but once we meet, there is this instant connection, and I know that if in between anything happens, I can reach out to them. And but that was a process. And then there were friends, and I found myself similar to what you described. Like, I was on the phone with them, and every time I had been on the phone with them, I felt down and dragged and didn't know why, until my husband made me, not husband at the time, boyfriend at the time, made me aware that it always happens when I've talked to that person. So might I not want to, like, call them less? And I had felt obliged to call them.
Absolutely.
The tricky thing is that for a very long time, the only relationship that I still had in my life that felt rather draining and stressful was the one with my mother. And I think that's one of the hardest, because you described, like, childhood friends, and it can go even back further than that when it's your family. And that's even harder, because your parents have done so much for you, and you feel obliged to give back.
And I love that you've brought family into it, because I was just going to do that, because it's so much harder when it's family. And all of the self talk that you give yourself, that this is really selfish, that this person's, especially if it's a parent, like, they've cared for me, they've made all these sacrifices, and I'm feeling like I don't want to spend a lot of time around them, or I don't want to do like we talked about in the previous episode, I don't want to go for Christmas dinner at their house. All these things where it's like you're made to feel, and sometimes you're told that it's selfish. And it's really, really hard, because, like, going back to the family example, when two families merge together, when you get into a relationship, then it gets even more complicated, or it can get more complicated, because there's more people to consider.
Navigate.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be really hard as well with siblings and extended family. And it's just knowing that you can do this in a really loving way, because I think the narrative we're told is that when we step into our boundaries, when we start to look at our relationships and look at where we're feeling that we're bringing our best selves, and being able to show up as our best self and be loved and accepted in that way, when we start to assess these relationships and maybe start the conversation to have change, the narrative is that you're the problem. So you're being selfish, you're being hard work, you're being difficult. Why can't you just do what everybody else has done? Why can't we just do what we've always done? And it's all on you, and it can make you feel like you're the baddie, and this is maybe something wrong with you, rather than with the relationship and the expectation between you both.
Expectations,
And one thing that really helped me was thinking of the right way to communicate it. Because it can, saying to somebody, I don't want to see you, has a different energy and message to it, to wording it in a more loving and understanding way. And sometimes, especially with, I'm thinking of one person in particular that I've had to do this with, you are literally having to repeat yourself so that they understand that you're not moving on that boundary. Yes, you still love them. Yes, you still care for them, but this situation is changing, and that's okay on both sides, for both parties. You know, and I don't know if I've mentioned this in a previous episode. I feel like I have, but I always start a sentence with, "This is coming from a place of love," because I think that I just think that that's the best way I can describe it. Like, because I'm not very good with words sometimes and saying what I feel in the moment. So if I start with that, this is coming from a place of love, then it kind of softens whatever I've got to say next. And I know that, like with my mum, bless her, the pressure to be there on Christmas Day was huge, like so big when, you know, I first moved out and got independent, so to speak. And I had to kind of like prepare myself every year for the conversation. And then I would say to her, I really want you to listen to what I've got to say. This is coming from a place of love. I'm not coming on Christmas Day, but I am doing X, Y, or Z, and I'm going to really enjoy that with you. And I really want to enjoy that experience with you. But if you keep asking about Christmas Day when it's not going to happen, it's going to devalue all these other experiences that I want to have with you over Christmas. And it really took time on both sides for this to be, because I know that my mum wanting me there on Christmas Day, for her, was a really loving thing. She wants all her children together. Like, I totally get it. And I think it's really lovely. But that's not what I want. And it's not what my relationship with my husband, my family needs. It's too much pressure. You know, there's too much to go into it all. Like, there's just too much going on. So to really frame it in a way of lovingly telling them what you need from them, as well as what they can expect from you, is a skill that I'm still working on, but is one to maybe consider. So when you are stepping up that boundary, the other person isn't getting a rejection, a full-on rejection. You know, they're getting that space to be able to respond to what it is that you need.
I just want to make the distinction here. We are back in the boundaries game, right? And the boundaries has a lot to do with like our pelvic area and our sacral yes and no, leaning into a relationship or not. But the outgrowing relationships, I think, is even before that, because you can't set a boundary unless you realize that you've outgrown a certain relationship and start feeling worthy of being your own person. So I believe that goes even deeper. This worthiness of it's okay to be who I am.
Yeah.
And when there is someone with whom it's not matching and we don't find a common language, common ground to renegotiate our relationship, then that's it. It's okay to be your own person and to move forward in a way that serves you, because you are worthy of living a life that feels good to you and not putting up with people. I mean, obviously there are situations where we have to put up with certain people that we might not like so much, especially in the work field or whatever. But in your personal relationships, you are worthy of defining on your own what you're up for and what you're not. And just to make that distinction, because once you start changing, especially these deep changes of, now I'm going to do Christmas differently because I choose me.
Yeah.
That's when you come across these expectations the most.
Yeah.
That's when it starts to resurface. And as you very aptly described, it's often the person who steps out of what's usual who is called on.
Yeah.
Who is being the weirdo or It's basically the witch hunt all over again, because that person is hunted as the witch or the magical person, and burned at the stake of social conformity, so to speak. And that is going to happen. So whenever you start stepping up, choosing yourself, it is going to happen at some point with some person, not with everyone. There are people who can very well adapt to you growing, inner growth, and to developing. And there will be people, because the moment you do that, they realize, oh fuck, I might have to change here too. And we very often do not like change so much, even though we claim we want to change. The change part itself, the messy middle, is messy and hard. So not everyone is ready to do that and grow alongside you. And I just want to point that out, because we are very often surprised when suddenly we set a boundary, for example, and like no one is happy with it. Yeah, that's why. So don't be surprised. It's to be expected, but when you expect it, you can prepare yourself and your response to that.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks.
And you realize it's not your problem.
Yeah.
You realize it's not that you are a bad person, even though people might tell you that, but it's actually you choosing you. And there will be 100 other people, not that you want 100 other people, but 100 other people who will love and cherish you for who you are and for choosing yourself. And you will set an example for others to choose themselves as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I love that distinction. Yeah.
And relationships are messy. That's normal. Like every time there's someone else or something else or a pet or anything coming into the game, there needs to be communication and negotiation and maybe compromises and all of that.
Yeah.
And that's okay if it serves you and if it feels good to, like, mutually beneficial.
Absolutely.
But sometimes if it doesn't, and if there's no way of changing that, you might need to let that go. And letting go is hard as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's like, I'm just thinking as you're talking as well about how in the world that we currently live in, there's this added layer of like friendships and relationships that you've built through social media and online. And, you know, for some people, I know the biggest insult could be for someone to unfriend them or unfollow them. And that just blows my mind, because I just think that's everybody's individual right to see content that they want to see. And there's people that I am friends with and I get on great with them, but I don't resonate necessarily with their social media content. So I don't follow them, or I, limit what I see in their social world. And I think there's this added layer when it comes to removing ourselves from relationships or up leveling our relationships, that for the younger generation in particular, I think like my age, just at that borderline of it not being as prominent, but to the status around your presence on social media and who's seeing you and who isn't seeing you and what you should be presenting. If you're going through this growth and this change, and what you were maybe sharing before or following, more important, like following before, isn't resonating with you because you've outgrown it in some way, or you're just wanting a break from it. You know, the stuff that I've stepped back from and then I've gone back into it. And when we're talking about relationships, obviously, yes, there's family, friends, but when we're looking at like online social relationships, again, having that knowledge and that understanding that it's okay to not follow content that no longer resonates with you, and that you have permission to do that, and you also have permission to go back to that if later down the line that's what you want to do, because relationships are very complex in our current world. Like, there's so many people that I am friends with and that I love and adore that I've never met in person. Like, you're one of them. Like, so we have these physical relationships where we're seeing people, and people that have been in and around us for a long time, like family, close friends, childhood friends, etc. And then we have this, like, the cyberspace as well, like the virtual space. And sometimes the reason I'm sharing this is because there was a few people that I was friends with on social media because we went to school together, or we're in the same clubs, groups, whatever, when we were younger. And it took me a while to realize that what they were sharing really didn't make me feel good. And I was subconsciously, scrolling and absorbing it and digesting it. And this was a huge during the pandemic, when people were just so separated on views and opinions on things, and there was so much flying around that wasn't said from a place of love. It was just, everybody was in that fear mode and that uncertainty mode, that I made the decision to unfollow and like step away from a lot of people. Some of them were family, some of them were people that I play sports with or whatever, and that's okay. But I can still go and meet them at the sports club and have a nice time with them, and think that, not bring that into the real world relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, to me it makes sense.
Yeah, because I think when we're given this platform as well, you can see, because there's some people that are on social media and you see things and you're like, oh, I wouldn't expect that from them, and it's just like, oh, but we're all entitled to our opinion. And again, like, having that knowing that it's okay to separate that relationship from the virtual space to the real world space, if that's what we're going to call it.
Yeah. And also in the beginning, when you said that, like, in our society and the way we live together and our cultures, especially in the Western, quote unquote, modern world, there is this rigidity in you have to fit into this box, and then you're accepted as a person, and then I can be friends with you because I know what to expect. And once someone behaves differently, we fall out of that box. And I believe that in other cultures, and also like in other traditions, there is much more fluidity. And I love a mentor of mine who said, like, she doesn't want to be friends or even connected on social with anyone who can't hold her in highest regards. That even when she messes up and really makes a mistake, who can still see that she's trying to do good things in the world, and can then go and question and maybe point that out to her and get in an honest, open conversation around that mess up, so that she is able to, I don't know, understand where the other person is coming from, but like not canceling people out. And like I found that really, really good as a role model for myself. Like, would that person hold me in highest regards when I mess up? Like, will they give me the benefit of the doubt? Because I do that for other people. And would they do that too? And if yes, that's a person I want to stay connected to. And if no, if I can't even make one single mistake without them pointing fingers at me, then that's maybe not the for me, that's not the relationship I want to have with someone.
That's so beautiful. I love that. That's really powerful.
I know.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, because that's the
And
thing.
she
Like,
also said, like, as you say, on social media, like she says she doesn't follow any of her peers because she wants to follow people that, like, where every time she sees the content, it's like cheering her up and giving her something valuable, and not more of the, and also because of course it's different when you're like a business owner, because when you've got your peers and everyone is posting different things, then you get derailed from your personal voice. And so she wants to stay like connected to herself and her personal voice. And she makes sure that she, apart from that, gets all these nice little things that cheer her up, like food blogs and these kinds of things.
Yeah, my Instagram's just full of dog videos.
Or like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's really, I love that. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's a really good tip.
And those are the relationships you can't outgrow, because the person can't, like, because the person holds you in their highest regards. They can adapt to you changing. They are okay with you changing. And that's, I believe, why my relationship with my husband is so strong. I mean, we've been together for 10 years now, and 4 of them married, and no, 5 of them married. Whoa, we've been together for 13 years and 5 of them married. Now I've got it right. And he has grown alongside me the whole time, because I have undergone a massive shift.
Yes.
I've turned my whole life upside down, and he's still here, and we have a better relationship than we had, a deeper, closer relationship than we had in the beginning, because he's able to hold that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the other way is true as well, that I'm able to adapt to his needs, or different needs, and different growth.
Yeah.
But it's all about this openness and curiosity, I think.
I love that you're sharing that, because it's exactly the same in my marriage. And, you know, we often say, like, just reflect on how much we've changed individually and as a couple, and how beautiful that is that we're able to do that together. And like you say, support each other as they grow and evolve. And yeah, that's really, really lovely.
And that's the same for a friendship relationship, right? I had this other person, I went to a storytelling circle, and we each were supposed to share about a woman who has influenced us in our life. And she talked about her friend. She didn't call her the best friend, but it was a friend she had had for 20 years on and off, and all each going through their own changes, but still very close and connected. So it's not just in a romantic relationship, but any relationship that you can think of.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Also, when, like, I'm thinking of, like, older people and children. And when the older people are open to learning from the children, and the children, they will learn from the older people. And so there is just this mutual enrichment in the connection. And I think that's what it's about. And if you don't have these relationships in your life, then you have the chance to build new ones that are like that, if you choose yourself, and if you understand that you are worthy of having these relationships. Because when I think of women, but also like in abusive relationships, it doesn't have to be women, but many think that they don't deserve better. They are not worthy to have a relationship where they are cherished, or that once they leave that person, they will never find someone who truly loves them. And if that's you, I want to tell you, there will be someone who cherishes and appreciates you just the way you are, with all your quirks, with everything you are right now. And get out. I know it's a serious topic, but it's like, you are worthy of having a relationship, any kind of relationship, that fulfills you and the other person.
Everybody's worthy of that. Like, it's a birthright. Like, thank you for mentioning that, Lisa.
I mean, that's why we start with the worthiness practices in the beginning of our coaching, when we do any sort of pelvic care coaching is because most of us, and basically all of us in this society, men, women, children, non-binary people, trans people, we all have not learned, like not got this notion that we are inherently worthy. It gets trained out of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not something, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, it's not something that you just do one session on and you're worthy. Like, I think you'll be the same. We come back to it all the time. Like, remind ourselves on a daily basis that we are worthy. And just because of the society that we live in, it's so adapt to strip us of that it's almost like a muscle that you need to keep training all the time and caring for, because to me it's just the foundation of everything that we both do in our work. Like, as soon as you are able to step into that realization that you're worthy, then everything else becomes slightly more easier and more open to be received. Yeah.
And I myself work on that. I encounter myself in situations where I'm like, "Ooh, fuck! I underestimated the unworthiness I feel."
Yeah.
It's a journey of reminding each other.
Absolutely.
All the time. Yeah. So if you've got any questions around this, or if you would just like to share your experience, or if you see things differently to what we've shared now, feel free to leave us something in the comments or send us a mail or reach out in any way. We love a good conversation around these topics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'd say with that, when this comes out, have a good Christmas, or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or whatever other holiday you're celebrating. And if it's not holiday season when you watch this, then just have a lovely day.
Yeah.
And we see you next time.
Thank you for being here. Bye.